The sky was a clear, brilliant blue over London that morning. At Heathrow Airport, one of the world's busiest hubs, the daily rhythm of takeoffs and landings was beginning. Among the many aircraft preparing for departure was British Airways Flight 762, an Airbus A319 set for a routine hop to Oslo, Norway. The weather was perfect, the pilots were seasoned professionals, and everything on the checklist seemed in order. As the jet lined up on runway 27 left, the crew received their final clearance. British Airways 762, runway 27 left, cleared for takeoff. The reply from the cockpit was calm and confident. Cleared for takeoff, runway 27 left, British Airways 762. The engines roared to full power, and the plane began its accelerating dash down the tarmac. For the passengers, it was the start of just another business trip or holiday. For the crew, it was the first flight of a standard day. But an invisible mistake, a small oversight made hours earlier in the dark of the maintenance hangar, was waiting to reveal itself. This simple error was about to trigger a terrifying chain of events, turning a normal morning flight into a desperate struggle for survival high above the streets of London. What began as a perfect takeoff was moments away from becoming a frantic Mayday call. The story of this perilous flight actually begins the night before, on May 23, 2013. The Airbus A319, a reliable workhorse of short-haul routes, was undergoing a routine weekly check. As part of this maintenance, technicians needed to inspect the integrated drive generator oil levels inside both of the plane's engines. To do this, they had to open the large, semicircular fan cowl doors on the front of each engine nacelle. They unlatched the doors and began their work, but soon hit a snag. They didn't have the specific tool required to complete the oil check. Following procedure, they should have either found the correct tool or at least securely relatched the heavy cowl doors before leaving the aircraft. Instead, they left the doors hanging open, unsecured, and walked away. No warning notice was placed in the cockpit to alert the next crew of the unfinished work. This was the first critical failure. Later that same night, the technicians returned to finish the job. But in a tragic mix-up, they went to the wrong aircraft. Instead of returning to the A319 that would become Flight 762, they walked over to a different Airbus, an A321, parked on a nearby stand. They serviced this other plane, believing it was the one they had left earlier. Satisfied, they then signed off all the paperwork, declaring the maintenance on Flight 762's aircraft complete. This sealed the fate of the next morning's flight. The fan cowl doors on the A319 remained unlatched, and the oil levels they were meant to check were still potentially below standard. The plane was now a hidden danger, signed off as perfectly airworthy. Early the next morning, at 5:45 a.m., the flying crew for British Airways Flight 762 reported for duty. The captain was 50 years old, a highly experienced pilot with over 12,500 flight hours, more than half of them on this type of Airbus. He had started his career as an engineering apprentice, giving him a deep technical understanding of aircraft. The first officer, or co-pilot, was 33 and also very experienced, with over 5,000 flight hours. Today, it was his turn to handle the flying, with the captain monitoring and supporting. They gathered their paperwork, reviewed the technical log which showed no problems, and headed out to their aircraft at Terminal 5. As part of the vital pre-flight ritual, the co-pilot conducted an external, walk-around, inspection. He methodically circled the jet, looking for any signs of trouble, checking tire pressure, looking for hydraulic fluid leaks, inspecting the wings and control surfaces. It was a clear morning, and in the early light, everything looked normal. The unlatched fan cowl doors, positioned low on the bottom curve of the engine nacelles, did not catch his eye. He saw nothing out of the ordinary and returned to the cockpit. Pre-flight checks complete. Anything unusual on the walk-around, he might have said. Nothing out of the ordinary. Everything looks good, would have been the reply. But it did not look good. The first opportunity to catch the error had been missed. On the ground, other routines continued. The aircraft was fueled with 7,600 kilograms of kerosene, plenty for the journey to Oslo and back. Passengers, 75 of them, boarded calmly, settling into their seats for the 2-hour flight. During this time, a member of the ground staff even took photographs of the aircraft for a training video, completely unaware that the engine cowls were insecure. Finally, a tug driver arrived to push the plane back from its stand. He, too, performed a visual check of the aircraft before connecting his tug. He walked in an anti-clockwise direction, as was standard, but like the co-pilot, he was not specifically trained to identify an unlatched fan cowl door. For a second time, the critical fault was right there in plain sight, and for a second time, nobody saw it. At 6:57 a.m., the tug pushed the jet back, and the pilot started the engines. Flight 762 was now active and moving under its own power, a latent defect ticking like a time bomb at the heart of both its engines. The weather was ideal for flying. Light winds, excellent visibility, a few scattered clouds. The pilots taxied to runway 27 left, performed their final cockpit checks, and were cleared for takeoff. At 7:16 a.m., the co-pilot, at the controls, pushed the thrust levers forward. The engines responded with a powerful whine, and the Airbus began speeding down the long runway. Inside the cabin, passengers felt the familiar push back into their seats. Outside, the world began to blur. But for those passengers seated over the wings, with a view of the engines, the blur outside their windows suddenly included something very strange. As the plane accelerated, the large, unsecured fan cowl doors began to vibrate violently. Then, they started to flap up and down like giant, panicked bird wings, straining against the hurricane-force airflow generated by the engines and the plane's own speed. It was a bizarre and frightening sight. The passengers pointed, their voices rising in confusion and alarm. But in the cockpit, all the dials and gauges showed normal. The pilots, focused on the complex takeoff procedure, felt nothing unusual. As the nose wheel lifted off the tarmac, the stress became too much. The flapping doors were instantly ripped clean off the engines. With terrifying force, they were shredded and flung backwards by the slipstream. One moment they were there, flailing wildly, the next, they were gone in a cloud of shattered composite material. The pilots of another aircraft waiting to take off saw debris scatter across the runway behind Flight 762. Concerned, they immediately radioed air traffic control. British Airways 762, another aircraft has reported debris on the runway. Can you confirm everything is normal? The message came through to the climbing Airbus. In the cockpit, the pilots were puzzled. Debris? What could that be? I don't know. Instruments are all showing normal. They had no idea that their own aircraft was the source of the debris. They acknowledged the call and continued climbing, unaware that their plane was now critically damaged. The consequences of the cowl doors breaking off were immediate and severe. Chunks of debris smashed into the plane's fuselage and wings. One piece struck with particular precision, puncturing a small but vital pipe on the right engine called the fuel metering unit spill return pipe. This damage created an instant and significant fuel leak. High-pressure jet fuel began streaming out from the right engine. The conditions were perfect for a catastrophic fire, but for now, the leak was invisible to the crew, a silent bleeding of the aircraft's lifeblood. In the cabin, panic was starting to bubble. Passengers who had seen the cowls tear away were shouting and jabbing at their flight attendant call buttons. The senior cabin crew member found the commotion unusual and tried to call the flight deck on the interphone. The captain saw the call light flash just as he was retracting the landing gear, a busy and critical moment. Assuming it was a minor cabin issue, he ignored it, planning to respond once the initial climb was complete. Down in the cabin, the senior crew member saw the call wasn't answered. She misinterpreted this, thinking the pilots must be aware of the situation and were dealing with it. She did not call again. This breakdown in communication left the pilots in the dark for several more crucial minutes. The aircraft continued its climb. At 1,100 feet, the co-pilot engaged the autopilot and moved the thrust levers to the climb setting. Then, just 1 second later, a loud master caution alarm blared in the cockpit, and a warning message flashed on the screen. The auto-thrust system had disengaged by itself. This was the first concrete sign to the pilots that something was seriously wrong. Their routine flight had just ended. They were now in an abnormal situation. Following their training, they continued to clean up the aircraft, retracting the flaps and accelerating to a safe climbing speed. With the immediate tasks handled, they could finally turn their attention to the Electronic Centralized Aircraft Monitor, ECAM, which displays fault messages. The captain saw that the pressure ratio gauge for the right engine was blank. He followed the computer's instructions, but just 4 seconds later, another master caution sounded. A new, more serious message appeared: they had lost the yellow hydraulic system. The yellow hydraulic system is one of 3 such systems on the Airbus A319. It powers crucial components like the right engine's thrust reverser, some of the brakes, the nose wheel steering, and parts of the flap and slat system. Its loss was a major problem. The captain swiftly followed the procedure, isolating the failed system to prevent it from draining pressure from the other, healthy hydraulic systems. The plane was now flying with degraded capabilities, but it was still flyable. The crew, now fully aware they had a serious emergency, leveled off at 6,000 feet to deal with the situation. It was at this point that the co-pilot turned his head to look back out the window, visually inspecting the right wing. What he saw was chilling. "Captain, I'm seeing some damage on the right wing. It looks like something hit it, possibly debris." The pieces were beginning to come together. The debris report from the runway, the hydraulic failure, and now visible damage. The captain immediately took control of the communications. "Pan pan, pan pan, pan pan. This is British Airways 762. We have an engine issue and a hydraulic system failure. Requesting radar vectors to return to Heathrow Airport." The international urgency call, pan pan, signified a state of urgency, one step below the extreme distress of Mayday. Air traffic control responded instantly, offering vectors to keep them near the airport. Now, the senior cabin crew member finally managed to relay what the passengers had been trying to say. She called the cockpit. "Captain, I've just checked the right engine. The top looks like it's blown open. There's visible damage." The captain instructed her to make a calm announcement to the passengers while they worked on the problem. She did so, asking everyone to remain seated. A short while later, she called again with worse news. "Captain, I've just checked again. The left engine cowling is missing as well. Both engines were damaged." The pilots now understood the source of the debris. They briefed for an immediate return to Heathrow, aiming for runway 27 right, as the left runway was now closed due to the debris they had left behind. But the situation was still deteriorating. A new alarm chimed in the cockpit, a fuel imbalance warning. The co-pilot's eyes scanned the fuel gauges. The right tank's quantity was falling faster than the left. "We have a fuel leak," he stated grimly. He was correct, but the leak had already been draining their fuel for over 10 minutes. The captain notified air traffic control of the suspected leak, reporting they still had about 5 tons of fuel on board. He then made a reassuring announcement to the passengers, explaining about an engine cover coming off and promising a safe return to Heathrow. He then called the senior cabin crew member to the flight deck for a quick briefing, telling her they would land in about 6 minutes and prepare the cabin for a normal landing and a subsequent inspection on the runway. Back in the cockpit, the co-pilot was doing rapid calculations. The fuel was draining at an alarming rate. Originally he thought 100 kilograms every 2 minutes, but he soon revised it to a terrifying 100 kilograms every minute. The right engine was feeding on a dying supply. He urged the captain to consider shutting down the right engine proactively to save fuel and prevent a possible engine surge or fire from fuel starvation. The captain, weighing the options, decided to keep it running for now, wanting its thrust available for the final approach. They configured the aircraft for landing, flaps set, and lined up with the runway's guidance beam. 14 miles from touchdown, with the runway almost in sight and the plane descending through 4,000 feet, the hidden crisis finally erupted. A loud, sickening bang echoed through the airframe, followed by violent shuddering. In the cockpit, the instruments for the right engine spun wildly toward zero. It had failed catastrophically. The captain instantly reached up and hit the engine fire shut-off switch, cutting all fuel and hydraulic fluid to the dead engine. But as he did so, another, even more terrifying alarm screamed through the cockpit, the continuous, loud clanging of the fire bell. The leaking fuel, spraying onto the hot engine core, had finally ignited. The right engine was now on fire. In the cabin, the bang and shudder were felt by everyone. Passengers by the windows saw flames and black smoke pouring from the right engine. Panic erupted. Screams filled the air. People clutched their armrests, some prayed, others sat in frozen silence. The plane was now flying on a single engine, with the other one dead and burning. The crew acted with lightning speed. The captain discharged the first fire extinguisher bottle into the right engine nacelle. Seconds later, the autopilot disconnected, forcing the co-pilot to fly the heavy, damaged aircraft manually. The captain's voice was tense but controlled as he sent out the highest distress call. Mayday! 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 This is British Airways 762. We have a fuel leak and engine issues. We are planning to land at Heathrow but may need to go around. He then lowered the landing gear and fired the second and last fire extinguisher. The fire warning, ominously, remained active. Turning to the co-pilot, the captain delivered a sobering line. This landing has to be it. We don't get another go. With the runway now filling the windshield, he took manual control at 500 feet. You manage the thrust, he instructed the co-pilot, who was now solely responsible for keeping the single left engine at the exact power needed. The aircraft was unstable, heavy on the right side from the imbalance and the dead engine. The captain fought the controls, aiming for the centerline. In the cabin, the vibrations were intense, and a faint acrid smell of smoke seeped in. The passengers braced for impact. Then, at 7:44 a.m., just 28 minutes after its troubled takeoff, British Airways Flight 762 touched down firmly on the runway at Heathrow. The co-pilot immediately pulled the thrust lever for the remaining left engine into reverse, using its power to help slow the plane. Because of the earlier hydraulic failure, the normal braking system was weakened. The captain had to apply manual brake pressure, which he did with firm, steady force. The stress was too much for one of the tires, which burst with a loud pop. But the plane was slowing. From the control tower, a final warning came: British Airways 762, flames visible from your right engine. The captain expertly steered the aircraft so the wind would blow the fire and smoke away from the passenger cabin. The plane rolled to a final, safe stop on the runway, surrounded by emergency vehicles that had been racing alongside. Firefighters engulfed the burning right engine in foam, quickly extinguishing the flames. With the fire out, the crew initiated an evacuation. Using slides on the left, undamaged side of the aircraft, all 75 passengers and 5 crew members evacuated safely. There were no serious injuries. The passengers, shaken but alive, stood on the grass beside the runway, watching as smoke curled from the crippled Airbus. The journey to Oslo had ended barely a few miles from where it started, but it had ended in survival. The subsequent investigation by the Air Accidents Investigation Branch, AAIB, uncovered the chain of errors. The primary cause was the maintenance technicians failing to latch the fan cowl doors and then mistakenly certifying the wrong aircraft as fixed. The design of the latches, low on the engine and not painted for high visibility, made them easy to miss during walk-around inspections by both the co-pilot and the tug driver. A cascade of small, unconnected human errors had nearly led to tragedy. In the wake of the incident, major changes were made. British Airways and Airbus revised maintenance procedures, emphasizing stricter sign-off protocols and tool accountability. The design of the fan cowl latches was modified to make them more obvious, and high-visibility paint was applied. Training for both flight crews and ground handlers was enhanced to improve awareness of such specific hazards. The story of British Airways Flight 762 stands as a powerful testament to the unforgiving nature of aviation, where a single, tiny oversight can spiral into a life-or-death crisis in minutes. But it also stands as a testament to the value of rigorous training and calm professionalism under pressure. The pilot's skillful management of multiple, cascading failures, a fuel leak, a hydraulic failure, an engine explosion, and a fire, turned a potential disaster into a story of remarkable recovery. It is a stark reminder that in the complex dance of human and machine that carries us through the sky, vigilance at every single step, from the mechanic in the hangar to the pilot in the cockpit, is the non-negotiable price of safety. The passengers who boarded for a simple flight to Oslo that morning learned an unforgettable lesson about the fragility and resilience of modern flight, and they walked away with the most valuable arrival of all, a second chance.